I'm assuming you're all there. So basically, my name is Kay Shearing, and I'm the founder of the Children's Healthy Food Company. My journey into children's nutrition started when my twin granddaughters were born. They was born very prematurely, and during the first year of their life, they had lots of operations, lots of illnesses, constantly on antibiotics. So when they got to the stage where they was going to be eating what we ate, I wanted to see if I could find a way to maximise nutrition for them, keep out of their diet anything that we shouldn't be putting into their bodies. So I started to research what children's nutrition actually looked like. I was lucky, I was a stay-at-home mum when my own children were small, and I thought I cooked healthily for them. But during my research into what was going to be feeding the twins, it became very apparent that I knew very little about children's nutrition. Like most parents, you know, we're busy keeping them fit and safe, and you know, we cook and we feed them what we cook for the whole of the family, which is normal practice. But what I discovered was the amount of things like good fats they needed, the amount of calories they needed per day, the amount of carbohydrates they needed a day. So being a typical overbearing granny, I employed a paediatric dietitian to help me research and find what was right for children. Now, during this time, I was also looking around at what was available in retail, so in our supermarkets, what was available for children. Where we were spending lots of time in hospitals, I was looking at the hospital food for children. And if we took them out for the day, so Chestnut World of Adventures, for example, what was the children's offering there? Legoland, what was the children's offering there? And without fail, in the UK, what we were feeding children was appalling. The nutrition was completely wrong. And there wasn't enough calories, there wasn't enough good fats, etc. So Donna and I, my daughter and I, decided there was a gap in the market for truly healthy children's food. So I researched properly, and I looked into the companies that were supplying food into the NHS, where the children were going on a regular basis, nurseries, because we was looking to get the children into nurseries, and just everywhere. And everywhere either gave smaller portions of adult food or so-called specialist children's food that fell far short. So basically, we decided there was a gap, and we would create a company that did solely concentrate just on children's food. We primarily was looking at hospitals' offerings, and so we approached hospitals and hospital trusts, and we managed to get launched into the NHS in 2017. We're the only company in the country that concentrates on children's food, because there's such a small portion of the population, especially in hospital populations, that people tend to overlook them. But if there's one place children should be eating healthily, it is in hospital when they're not well. And equally, during this journey in the NHS, we met Anthony. We was both in another company, and we got chatting. And what is nice is, because we haven't bumped into many people through this journey that really care properly about children's food. It's just there, you know, it's only a small percentage, it's fine. Whereas with Anthony, he cared what he fed his children. So we had this conversation about, well, you know, lots of nurseries have their own chef, for instance, you know, isn't it better that we cook this ourselves on site? And the answer to that is, a chef is just that. He's a chef. He's there to make sure the food is cooked nicely, that it tastes nicely, it's well presented. He's not a dietitian. Now, the difference is with what we do, when Anthony chooses a dish to serve the children, he knows that every time that's ordered, it's going to be the same ingredients in the same proportion. So we have consistent nutrition every single day in that nursery. We don't need a chef to do it. So there's no worries if somebody's off sick. The children still get their nutritionally full meal every single day. What we've aimed to do is to each portion serving provides a child with 1/3 of their macronutrients. So I'm sure lots of you know what macronutrients are, but these are the nutrients that children need in large volumes every single day. So they need lots of calories, they need lots of good fats, and they need lots of carbohydrates, while keeping their salt and sugars and sat fats as low as we can. We never add salt or sugar to any of our meals, ever. Unfortunately, salt is in most things we eat and in most ingredients. So things like cheese, milk, and stocks, you're going to get a salt reading, but we try to keep that as low and as minimal as possible. So this is where we sort of met Anthony. We came in and we've been feeding the nursery now. Anthony can correct me. I think it's got to be about 2.5, 3 years possibly. But a lot of people don't understand the huge difference between what children need and what we need. If you imagine a child between the ages of 6 months and 2 years old, if you remember when your child was that age or was coming up to that age, what they was doing when they was 6 months old compared to what they're doing at 2 years old, that's a rapid growth and development stage. And what we found with research, this research comes from UNICEF, nearly 2 out of 3 in that age group are not getting the correct nutrition to fuel that rapid growth. And what we have got is 1 in 3 children under the age of 5 are either undernourished or overweight. So there's lots of evidence there that we're not getting it right, whether that's the government not giving us our information, or if we're so busy in our working lives, we don't stop to think about it. But what I've done is I've tried to fill that gap so that I do that thinking for you. And as I'm getting out in the market, I'm managing to make great waves with it. I've done some meetings with government, and I've stressed that we need more information for parents. You know, when you leave hospital with a new baby, you come out with your samples of nappies and maybe baby wipes, etc. What do they tell you about what you should be feeding your child? That first 6 months of milk only goes rapidly, and suddenly you're responsible for putting this nutrition in your child. So I think there should be more literature available for parents to demonstrate what does constitute a healthy diet for children. And that's really what I'm all about. You know, I won't take no for an answer when people say, oh, it's fine, it's you know, I keep going. And we have, I think we've made a difference. And I think we've just undergone this big food review for the NHS, for instance, and I've been included in that. And the NHS are now going to be offering a dedicated children's meals for children in hospital. So I am getting there. So if you want me to carry on, some of the things that are massively different to adult to children feeding is a child aged 2 to 3 needs to get about 30 to 35% of their calories a day from fat. Now, as adults, we only need to get 5 or 6% of our calories a day from fat. So fat is something we need to control in our diet. Children need huge amounts of it. So, and if we don't give children enough good fats, that's a lack of energy, it's a lack of warmth, and it's all things that children are using up massively every day. Their little bodies are going top gear all the time, playing and running. We sit sedentary in our desks, etc. So it is a completely different thing, and it's so important because during those first few years of their lives, all of their organs are developing and they need to be fed the correct nutrition to ensure they develop correctly. And with your little ones at Anthony's nursery, it seems, well, it is a lifetime away that they're going to hit 30 years old. But if we don't get this right now, while they're tiny, and get that nutrients in their bodies, when they hit 30, we're seeing it now. We're getting 30-year-olds now presenting with the same illnesses that really only our nans and granddads at 70s used to get. These elderly persons' illnesses are coming in much sooner, and that is, without any shadow of doubt, it's down to poor nutrition. So that's why this is so important. And I'll pause there and let you all think about that, and maybe if there's any questions, or if you would like me to keep going with some examples.
Okay, I do have a question actually. Do you mind taking us through the process that you go through when you start developing a meal, and how you do that? Okay,
right. So what I do, because I won't add any salt and sugars and heavy salt-based stocks to my dishes, I have to, say for instance, if I'm doing a chicken casserole, what I would do with that, I'd go back to when I was a child growing up, and my mum used lots of heavy salt-based stocks and everything, but I remember that chicken casserole having a lovely warm and in-depth flavour. So what I will do is I will start with the basic ingredients of a chicken casserole. So we've got our chicken, we've got all our different vegetables, and then I need to make sure I get the calories up high. Now, a very good way of getting calories up high for a child, remember those 35% of calories must come from fat. So what I tend to get in there is lots of rapeseed oil. Rapeseed oil is good for good fats, and it's quite low in sat fats. So we keep the sat fats down, but we get those calories and fat levels up. So I will then put this dish together. Make sure it tastes nice. It will get tried out on the twins. It will get tried out on all the children in the family. See if they like the flavours. Then it goes over to the paediatric dietitian, who will then look at the ingredients and say, right, if we take a 2-year-old, we're looking at a portion size of maybe 225 grams. Does 225 grams of this chicken casserole give those children the calories, carbs, and good fats they need? Now, in the early days, it would take me maybe 6 or 7 attempts to get the nutrition condensed enough into a portion size a child will eat. These days, I can usually do it in a week because I've been doing it so long. But once the dietitian approves the portion size that a 2-year-old could eat that, we then work out. So we've got babies that are weaning, we've got 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds in nursery. So the way it works with Anthony is when we first started to work together, he buys the food in a multi-portion, and we worked out the portion size for each age within his nursery. So what that chicken casserole will do, it will come with dumplings, it will come with potatoes, and then Anthony can build the portion size to suit your child's age group. And that is what we've done across, we've got a range of about 30 odd dishes now, and every meal will provide the macronutrients, and because we only use a clean spec, clean ingredients, it also provides loads of micronutrients, so they're vitamins, etc. So let me give you an example of the lasagna that Anthony will be feeding your children. It will give them 1/3 of their calories, carbs, and good fats, but then it also gives them, for instance, potassium, which they need for their nervous systems. They need about 800 micrograms a day of that. In that one portion of lasagna for your child, we give them 400 micrograms. So that's half of their potassium requirements. In their zinc requirement, which they need for their immune systems, they need 5 grams of that a day. That same lasagna gives them 3 of that. The folate for their blood cells, etc., to keep their blood healthy, they need about 70 micrograms of that a day. Again, that same lasagna's got 40 in it. Vitamin A, they need 400 micrograms a day. We've got all of that in that lasagna, and that's for their eyesight and their immune system. So it's been a very complex development to make sure we tick the boxes for those children. And it's built for children. It does its job. So it can be a long process. It took 6 years to get the range together, because I wouldn't settle for anything that didn't meet the specific requirements of children. So these days, if Anthony, which he has, he's asked for some new dishes to be brought in. Hopefully, by the time they come back in the new year, we'll be able to roll those out in the nursery.
So, Kate, I've got another question. Are there any kind of hints and tips for parents on ingredients they can use at home that will help take an adult dish and make it into a child's dish?
Right. So yes, there is. If you're cooking at home, which obviously you will be, the way I would do this is obviously for the parents. I mean, everyone's different. So you could be watching your weight, you could be special dietary, but let's take run of the mill. I would cook, say I was making a spaghetti bolognese, I would cook it as a way of how you and your family, your adults in the family want it. I would then take the little one's dish in a separate pan, and I would add some rapeseed oil to that. I would add some more carbohydrates. So your child will need a lot more pasta than you think he or she needs. You can even, I've been known to grate cooked potato into a sauce and stir it in and so you get more carbs in there. You know your child. Have they got a big appetite? They've got a small appetite. If they've got a big appetite, you need to condense it less because they're going to eat more. But if they've got a very small appetite, whack that oil in, get some more carbohydrates in there, and build it for that child. You can't really overdo you can spoil the dish with oil, but you won't spoil your child with the oil. So you've got to get that balance right. But hide stuff in there. Don't be scared to stick potato in a spag bowl. It go in the sauce, it'll get lost in the sauce, and you're increasing your carbs. Get the oil in there. Rapeseed oil is a good one, and there's other new oils like avocado oil coming out all the time. But if it's good oil, make sure it's a good oil. You don't want your vegetable oils and cheap oils. Stick with a good quality rapeseed, good quality olive oil, and that's great for your little one.
So you're talking a lot about carbs as well. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on how important carbs are and sort of what proportion of the food should be carbs?
Right, okay, so if we take carbohydrates, so you want complex carbs made up of sugars and starch. You want complex carbs, so you want your pastas, your rice and your potatoes. They're your carbohydrates you want to get into your child. So if you take a 4-year-old, they need around about 198 grams of carbs a day. Okay, now if you look on your packs of pasta, etc., it tells you how many carbs are in there. So what you're looking at is if you split that 198 carbs, say let's call it 200 carbs, split that into 3 meals a day. You can then pinch a few carbs out of there for snacks. People are very quick to believe only snacks should only be fruit and things like that. But what we need to do, we need to keep those carbs up. Those children are running around in nursery and playing, and you want to keep those carbs up all day long. So things like breadsticks are a great snack, and like breadsticks with hummus, things like that. Carbs are important for energy and warmth. Potatoes are the lowest in carbs out of those complex carbs. So, for instance, a big tablespoon of mashed potato will have about 15 grams of carbohydrates in it. But those same tablespoons with pasta and rice will more or less double that. So, you know, you want to get, but again, hide your carbs in. It's fine to just get them in where you can, but don't go down the route of snacks should only be fruit. get some carbs in them at snack time. A quarter of a sandwich is a great little snack. So you keep the carbs going. Carbs are in a lot. Carbs, you've got carbs in fruit, you've got carbs pretty much anywhere, but you want to avoid sugary carbs and you want to stick to your starchy carbs. Yeah, I'll explain that.
Okay, there's some Q&A now. So you've got a question. I don't know if you can see the questions.
No, I can't actually.
Okay, so the first question we've got is, could you give an example of what a daily meal plan for a 2-year-old could look like?
Right, so for a 2-year-old, I'll give you the exact. Right, so for a 2-year-old, we need to get around about 1,000 calories into them during the course of the day. So breakfast, I know it's hard to get kids to eat porridge, but if you could get a child to eat a starch, a carbohydrate, slow release carbohydrate breakfast. So to my mind, the best breakfast they could eat is a porridge with a banana. That's all slow release carbs. So it's not a quick sugar rush, like I hate to say it, Rice Krispies, Cocoa Pops, sugar rush. Then by 10 o'clock, the child's hungry again and lacking energy. So you want a nice carby filled breakfast. So porridge would be a great one. Then at around about, depending what time they start their day, but mid-morning, I'd be looking at some fruit with maybe a quarter of a sandwich. They can have breadsticks, they can have, well, it's endless really. If you've got the time and the patience to be at home, you could make them a little pot of pasta with a little bit of tomato sauce. That would be a great little snack. Then again, you have your break, and then lunchtime, again, depends on your ability to sort of stop and cook. But again, to my mind, I'd like to load them up for lunch. So I'd do their main meal at lunchtime. So that meal should consist of proteins. So for meat eaters, that's a portion of meat that they would like. And for meat eaters, it's so easy to meet their protein requirements. They only need about 14.5 grams of protein a day. Well, in a small chicken breast, you've got way over that. So if you imagine chopping up a little bit of chicken, a spoonful of minced beef, fish, if you're vegan or vegetarian, we must look at things like pulses and beans and get the protein into them that way. So that lunchtime meal should consist of a good portion of meat or pulses or beans. It should consist of some carbs, so we rice, pasta, or potato. Jacket potatoes are great, and children tend to quite like jacket potatoes or the potato skins even, and top them with a little bit of butter, cheese, that type of thing. And then you obviously need your vitamins and your minerals, so you should have some veggies in there. I know children can be funny with vegetables, but even if they only like one particular vegetable, that's not going to do them any harm. Let them have that vegetable every sitting if they want. One of my grandchildren, he'll only eat broccoli, and but he'll trot around happily with a head of broccoli, munching on it like a sweet. So we encourage him to do that. So I would lunchtime I would bulk them up. Then come mid-afternoon when they're starting to slow down for the day, again another little snack there, a bit more fruit, maybe a different snack to the morning. So maybe if you've done a sandwich in the morning, do breadsticks and dips in the afternoon, and then in the evening. You don't really want to bulk them up too much before they're going to bed. But what we'd be looking at, I would look, did they eat all their breakfast? Did they eat a good breakfast? Did they eat their snack at snack time? They ate a good lunch, right? Well, we haven't got too much pressure on them now to completely finish this meal. So give them the food they like. What you want at the end of the day is calm. So if you know there's a particular meal they're really fond of and is a good go-to meal, do that meal. It's absolutely fine. But again, you imagine your plate, you've got a third of the protein, a third of the carbohydrates, and then you've got your veggies, etc., for your vitamins and minerals. So that's how I would build the day. I'd look at it, and I'm happy to share the document that I follow is government issued, and it gives you the guidelines for each age group, and you'll know your child. Will your child eat more at lunchtime, or will your child eat more in the evening when everyone's sort of home together? So just don't make it stressful, because it needn't be. People always say, well, your family should sit down together and everything. No, if your little one likes to sit there while he's watching a cartoon or something and he'll clear his plate, where's the harm in doing that? You know, it's fine to do it. And that's the way I would build their day. You know, if your child's got loads of energy and is on the go all the time, or is your child one of those that likes to sit and play with his Legos or whatever on the floor? So build it around your child. And imagine, so if I say to you, you've got 1,000 calories to get into that child, look at packets, look, it's all freely available on the internet. How many calories in that porridge is there? Right, okay, well, I've ticked off 200 calories there this morning with that breakfast, so I know I've only got to get another 800 into him. So it's all readily available. And I'm happy to share it with Anthony's parents, so that you can just look at your packets, look at your charts, and go, right, he said he's 1,000 calories today, so there's not too much pressure on him to clear his plate tonight. So that's how I would do it. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, very, very good. Thanks. There's the next one is, what about protein? How much protein should 3-year-olds have in their meals? You kind of touched on it, but
14.5 grams. 14.5 grams of protein is your average. In fact, 14.5 takes them up to 4 years old, then it jumps up to 19.5. So as I say, with meat eaters, it's quite easy to get the protein into them. Very rarely will you not meet their protein requirements. And with children, as long as they're healthy, got 2 functioning kidneys, etc., you can't overdo the protein. The only time you can overdo protein, like I say, is if they're compromised with their kidneys or something, then you would have to take advice from their consultant. But other than that, between 14 and 19 for a 3 to 4 year old, and protein is the #1 nutrient. It's the one nutrient that every organ in your child's body needs. So it feeds absolutely everything. So for vegans and vegetarians, it doesn't matter whether they're vegan children or meat eating children, their protein requirements are the same. So you're looking to get, if you imagine, like I say, an average sized chicken breast, that's all the protein they would need for the day. With the beans and the pulses, it does jump up in portion size quite a bit. So it's one that I struggle with on my vegan meals, because I like to get as much protein in there. But then Anthony will tell you, I've packed one of our dishes full of lentils and now they won't eat it. So you have to find a protein. If you are a vegan or vegetarian, find a protein source that your child likes and go with it. Don't stress it. But if that child likes beans, cannellini beans, for instance, kidney beans, go with it, let them eat it, and it's getting the protein they needed. But on average, if you imagine a chicken breast, that's all the protein your child would need for the day. So that's where the protein comes in, and that's roughly, and minced beef is slightly higher in protein. So if they have a spag bowl, you know, I usually say about a 200 gram portion of bolognese sauce for a 2 to 3 year old with their pasta gives them all their protein they need. But there'll be protein in that breakfast, there'll be protein in their snack. So you're topping it up all the time. So I'd offer them a protein source at every stage of the day if you can. They can't, as I say, they can't overdo it, and every part of their body needs it.
Interesting, because when we sat down a few years ago and mapped out our daily portions, and we were trying to design a meal that we hit all the macronutrients, protein just was never an issue. Carbs carbs was just the hardest thing to hit their carb levels. And just going back to your point about porridge and bananas in the morning, it just seemed when I added that into the full meal plan, then suddenly you could hit it. But it was just so hard to hit.
Carbohydrates are a hard one, especially if your child hasn't got a big appetite, so it is hard to get them in there. So what you want to do, you want to look at sneaky ways to get their carbs in there. So like Anthony said, the banana, the porridge, look around. You'll know what your child likes, and look at the carbohydrate. We'll look at the carbohydrate, the calorie, and the protein levels in all their favourite food, and see if you're hitting the point. Because if you are, job done. So that's what you need to look at. Good fats, as I say, a simple way to do it is with the oil, the rapeseed oil. Don't be frightened. People, even homemade chips, kids love a chip. And if you're making your own homemade chips and you're cooking them healthily, that's a good form of carbohydrate. You've got their potato, they've got their little bit of tomato sauce in the corner. That's carbohydrates. That's great for them. Cooked in, I know people use dry fries, air fryers, all that nowadays, but even cooked in a good quality rapeseed oil, that's a good healthy carbohydrate. It's contributing towards their carbs, it's contributing towards their fats. Don't be scared. It's only packet chips and McDonald's chips that have got like 14 ingredients in them. There's 2 ingredients in a chip. It's a potato and it's oil. So that's good. That's good. So if they like a chip, there's no harm in that.
Thank you. Last one here, unless another one gets added, is: are there any common kitchen staples that caregivers should steer away from? So things that you would typically have in your kitchen that you think's fine, but maybe we should stay away from them.
Where to start? Obviously, with children, when you're feeding children, you don't want to add any salt into their diet. There's enough salt in various ingredients. If you make a macaroni cheese, you've got salt in the cheese, you've got salt in the milk. So avoid salt at all costs. Avoid adding sugar at all costs. Their palate is being formed now. You don't want that palate to get used to sugary foods. You don't want it to get used to salty foods. I'd get rid of any fats and oils that I cook with other than olive oil or rapeseed oil. So get rid of anything else you've got in your kitchen that is anything other than those 2. Look at gravy granules. Oh my God, nightmare. Don't use gravy granules. So full of salt. Find a low salt bouillon, low salt stock, and then use only as much of that as you need to make the meal palatable. It's really thinking of processed food. I would not dream of giving child processed meat. So I'd avoid bacon. You can get a very good bacon now that is nitrate free, but generally speaking, processed meat is full of nitrates, and it's been directly linked to cancer. So my grandchildren do not have bacon and processed meats. If you're going to make a sandwich, make it with some chicken, make it even with liver sausage, things like that. Processed meats are extremely bad for children's systems. We compromise their systems with the nitrates and everything. So children absorb nutrients better than we do. Okay, so vitamin A supplements help them to absorb it. If you've got a child that's a bad eater, a vitamin A supplement will help them absorb the nutrients. But don't forget, anything you put in their bodies, they're absorbing into their system. So things like, I say, processed meats are a big no-no. Don't compromise their systems with those. In a perfect world, everything would be fresh and home cooked. But if you're going to, we all want a night off of cooking, just look at the labels. When I started this company, I must have got pulled in several times in supermarkets because I was just hovering around reading labels to see what was in this food. So you really read your labels. It's all available online. So when your little one's in bed at night, if you've got a busy day, you can quickly Google on the supermarket websites, and it gives you the ingredients, it'll give you the nutrients. So you can quickly become a little super sleuth yourself. But I would keep it that there's always fresh fruit available, frozen fruit to make, to sprinkle over their porridge. It's absolutely fine. It's frozen within 24 hours of being picked. So it's actually quite often got more nutrients in frozen fruit and vegetables than the fresh, because what you think is fresh could be sitting there for 3 weeks out the bag or being transported. So a bag of frozen veg that you can throw into dishes is great for kids. I would just avoid, and I try to avoid with my grandchildren, anything that's overly processed, heavily laden with salt, and where possible, just put the simple thing together yourself. But biggest thing is avoid your processed meats. Avoid that at all costs, really.
Thank you. So I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit about preserving methods? So we use frozen for a reason, because we think that's the best way of doing it. What about high pressure processing and other types of processing?
Right. Okay. So we've looked into this because when I first started the company, I wanted everything to be fresh and organic, and then you get sort of come down off of your little cloud and you look at reality. Now, if, like I've just said, frozen, so let's take a frozen pea. None of us think twice really about buying a packet of frozen peas, and them peas are picked and frozen within 24 hours. So they've pretty much got exactly the same nutrients as when they were still in the soil. Now, with preserving, because we was approached by a supermarket many moons ago, and they wanted a chilled product. And the only way to give a product a shelf life, well, there was 2 ways. There was this high pressure that Anthony's talking about, and there was pasteurization. So both of these methods, so the one I'm most aware of is the pasteurization, because that was the process they was going to put my food through to give it a shelf life. So it's cooked, the food is cooked. So this lovely casserole that I've worked really hard to get all the nutrients in is cooked, then cooked again at an extremely high temperature for a long while, that destroys the nutrition. Okay, so that then processes, and same as that. Why would you put a food that's been high pressure gassed in your child's body? You shouldn't. So freezing is the only and most natural way to preserve the nutrients. So my food, for instance, is cooked. It goes out into the blast freezers within an hour of it being packed. It's in a freezer and it's being brought down to -18 within a couple of hours. Now that food has got all the nutrients in there that it had when I designed the meal, and it's cooked. Now, it's got in the freezer, it's status quo. So everything stops once that's frozen. So there's no deterioration of the nutrients in there. And it is, where possible, well, yeah, even to give it a 9-day, 10-day shelf life, you're going to compromise the nutrition. So if you take that pea that I was talking about, that's frozen within 24 hours. Now, take your broccoli that my little Henry likes walking around with. That's grown in Kenya. So it's grown, it's picked, it's stored. Then it's transported. Then it's shipped or flown over here. Then it's transported to the supermarket it's going to go to, and then it goes out on your shelf. So we could be looking at a 12-day process there before it gets on the shelf where Henry's mum can buy it. Now, it's scientifically proven that after the 4th day of a vegetable being picked, it's got 2/3 less nutrients in it. That's after 4 to 5 days. So we always think fresh is best. And the problem with freezing is, yes, the texture of a vegetable will very much change. So if you buy fresh green beans and do frozen green beans, there is a clear texture difference. But if we was to scientifically test both of those, unless this one was bought in a farm shop and sold the day it was picked, chances are the frozen bean would have more nutrients than the fresh bean. So freezing for me is the best way. Now with us, the way we do it, your children's food at that nursery is pretty much made to order, even though it comes with a year's shelf life, or 18-month shelf life, which has been scientifically proven that it can last that long and be fine. We don't store loads of food. So Anthony places his order, that goes off to our factory, who then makes it, freezes it, and it goes out to Anthony. So your children's food has most probably not been frozen for any longer than 6-7 weeks tops. But it's been scientifically proven that it would be fine up to a year, 18 months later, but we don't work that way. We want it so that vitamin C has been proven. It's a nightmare to have vitamin C stabilised in your children's food. Because after 6 months of being frozen, even the vitamin C will start to die because it's a very unstable vitamin. But in our dishes, that lasagna I was talking about, for instance, your child needs 30 micrograms of vitamin C a day. In that portion of lasagna, we've got 20 in there. And the good thing is it's still in there when they eat it after it's been frozen down.